Hi guys, so last time we looked at Astro, and today we're looking at one of the most heavily requested for a long time, WayV. Let's go. Right guys, so a few disclaimers. First of all, as always, if you guys want to follow me on Patreon, I'm starting to do more content on there as of the next few weeks. If you want to support me on there, that will be amazing. If you don't want to, that is absolutely fine as well. Just if you'd like to and want a little bit more content while I'm working on it, just follow me on there and it will be awesome. Right, so firstly, I would like to say that WayV, although they are a sub-unit of NCT, I've been told not to really mention that too much because there's some sort of political issue with China and SM. I'm not an expert on it, I don't really want to get into it, so for the purposes of this video, I'm just going to call them WayV. I'm not going to really mention the NCT affiliation too much, even though I'm aware it's there. Okay, so this group are kind of hard to do a vocal ranking for because firstly they haven't got a great deal of material out and half of the group don't really sing a lot. They've got some lines here and there, so I've got just about enough to work with, but when they get more material and subsequent releases, if there's a huge change in ranking, I will be open to doing a re-rank. But I just know a lot of you guys wanted this video, so I didn't want to keep you waiting for too much longer. And I wanted to round out the series of these particular groups. But yes, I am open to a re-rank if things change because certain groups weren't that clear. With that being said, WayV is still great and have some great vocalists, and everyone can kind of sing alright. Even WinWin, who I found lines for. So yeah, there's just a few things to bear in mind there, that there isn't the most comprehensive analysis that I can do with the vocals because they haven't showcased them that much. But with what I've got, I'll do my best. Without further ado, let's rank WayV's vocals. Okay, so in last place you can make an argument for two different people. One's got a more consistent instrument that I kind of understand better, and one does things here and there but doesn't really have a great deal to look at, and that's WinWin. So I've put him last kind of by default, but I will explain my reasoning. Okay, so WinWin, when I first looked at him back in the day for my NCT 127 analysis, I couldn't find a great deal of clips, but you guys on Twitter have sent me quite a few, and you guys on my community post sent me quite a few, so I now have more of an understanding. WinWin's voice doesn't sound like it's very practiced in any area in particular, but it can do quite a few things. In the lines that he's given, it kind of varies between kind of lower sitting, kind of a little bit higher in his chest voice, and then in King of Hearts he does the falsetto part. So I'm like, okay, WinWin can do clearly a lot of things with his voice, or at least we're being led to believe he can do quite a lot of things with his voice, but there doesn't seem to be any sort of cohesion between all the instruments. There doesn't really seem to be kind of a particular style that he sings in or a particular way that he sings with any sort of real technique. He just kind of gets the line he's given and does his best with it. From what I can see, when he kind of stays full and more connected, he sounds pretty good, he sounds pretty comfortable. Obviously his voice is quite a lot thicker and lower than most tenor vocalists would be because he's got a baritone voice. So when he kind of stays in his chest voice and stays connected, he sounds comfortable, he sounds pretty decent. However, I have noticed as he goes up a little bit, he has a habit of bringing his voice quite far back. Now, I'm not an expert on diction. I don't know if the Mandarin language has these tendencies. It may well do. I wouldn't really be surprised by that. But he does have a habit of kind of bringing his voice quite far back, which is always gives you kind of a robust, hooty sound, but doesn't really let you go anywhere with it. It kind of sticks where it sticks and doesn't really give you access into much of a mix or many dynamic colours or much range or anything like that. Obviously, kind of when he goes a little bit higher than that, he does the same sort of thing, but sounds like his voice has it, but it's a tiny bit shaky because he doesn't really want to be there, which to me just kind of sounds like lack of practice in this area, and he's just doing his best with the line that he's been given. So yeah, when he's kind of staying more full and connected, he sounds pretty comfortable, pretty okay, with slight far back placement. And then when he goes a little bit higher than that, it sounds a little bit uncomfortable, but that's probably due to kind of lack of practice lightening his chords and in those areas. So I think WinWin's voice has a lot of potential and can kind of go in a lot of different places, but he just doesn't have the practice in any of them to really make them stand out or have his own unique singing style. I think in years to come, once he's given more singing parts, we will know much more where his voice lies, where it's comfortable, and which particular avenue works in the best. But as of right now, we showcased a little bit of everything, but nothing kind of super well with much technique. So I'm putting him last because I don't think he's got, as I say, a style of his own singing-wise that really resonates with him and works super well yet. But it will certainly come because his voice clearly has access to a lot of things, just isn't all brought together as of right now. Okay, so to me, I've put Lucas second last because of the vocalists who kind of have a style that I've gauged, he is the least practiced and least able just about. But if you put him last behind WinWin, I understand why, but to me, Lucas has a style of his own that I'd like to delve into right now.
Right now 要转变破镜，人群中最闪耀的你，就让你带领着我。遗忘的理由，我会说我爱你，绝不能错过。Get him up， 写下过的兴奋 plus， 这城市的主人公，实力极限像天空，在人海中。누나 너무 예뻐 미쳐 baby 너의 감이 필요한 향기야 이메고.
Okay, so the main thing that draws you to Lucas's voice is it's really deep. He has a really thick, full voice, which is kind of interesting because the way he raps, he raps low and raps deep, but he doesn't rap with a super heavy style. Like, he doesn't keep his chords this together all the time. He lines it quite a bit when he raps, not like to the point where it's high or anything, it's just not as full and in your face. It's quite kind of light and nuanced. He sings in kind of exactly the same way. His voice is very spoken when he sings. It's very kind of rap styled. He basically sings around his speaking tone where he's very comfortable and doesn't deviate away from that a great deal, but because he doesn't really use as thick of a voice that he sometimes has, he doesn't have the feeling of chord closure together fully, which doesn't really let him to get into sort of any big powerful areas or belts or kind of a robust sound anywhere past his spoken tone really. When he thickens it and goes like da and that sort of area, his voice will sound resonant, it'll sound full, it'll sound really good because it has a natural affinity in this area due to the fact he's got a deep baritone vocal with a really rich timbre. But as he goes up, he kind of lightens it a little bit, kind of stays around his spoken pitch in more of a melodic, rappy style. He still sings to a point, and it is kind of melodic and vocal driven, but it is kind of still rappy and spoken, which suggests to me he's not very comfortable changing the pitch a huge amount, but I have heard him kind of add a bit more melody into it, kind of go a little bit R&B, and when he stays very low and very comfortable, his voice sounds nice, it sounds decent. It just lacks any kind of area to go into because he doesn't really mix super efficiently or anything like that. I've heard him kind of get into a falsetto and a head voice, but again, anyone can kind of do that. It's not hard to kind of go, ooh, or anything like that. It's just doing stuff with that makes it kind of more difficult. But yeah, Lucas's voice, it's essentially the same rapping and singing kind of, but he lightens it and keeps it a little bit more melodic when he does do vocals as opposed to rapping, but it kind of stays around his speaking pitch, just a little bit higher. There's no glaring placement issues. He doesn't really put it really far back or into his nose. It just sounds like he doesn't really know what to do with his voice in terms of kind of staying full and going up, or kind of lightening it to a point where it can do anything technically amazing or proficient. So yeah, his voice is okay. The tuning's fine. He kind of sings and raps in a similar style with a kind of lighter tone. His really deep speaking voice. But yeah, there isn't really much technical stuff to analyse. It's kind of okay, sits where it's comfortable, goes a little bit higher sometimes, and then kind of as he brings it much higher, his voice tends to crack a little bit because it doesn't really want to stay that grabbed that high, and obviously he doesn't really have the practice to kind of bring the chords together and really mix in an efficient way in that kind of middle of his voice. So yeah, it's decent low, decent when it's comfortable, but doesn't really go into any sort of area that efficiently, and there's no real huge reason for that. His voice just doesn't have the practice in it. I feel as though if he practiced it, it could well do it. It's just not what it does really. So yeah, his voice is alright, it's decent, it's got places to go, just doesn't have a huge range or huge mix potential as of right now. Okay, so once again, Hendry doesn't sing like a lot, but of the vocals I've heard of his so far are the most impressive. I'm kind of excited for the future because I think there's stuff there that he could work on and he'll be really good in future. Anyway, let's have a look at his vocals.
For a stranger, good gracious, I might even fly out of Vegas. 我爱你有多深？Wanna go home, wanna go home, wanna go home. Oh, you're mine, oh my baby. 把一句真心话都写进卡片。Oh baby, yeah yeah， 淹没没满大的规矩，那好吧，这场游戏 I'm a target。
Okay, so Hendry kind of has a similar singing thing going on as Lucas. His voice is very spoken and he's clearly a rapper. He doesn't really sing a lot, but when he does sing, he has more to work with to me than Lucas, and his voice has less of a strange tonal quality, I guess, because it's not as thick. He's still got a baritone voice, so what he can do is he can bring his voice down, kind of with his spoken pitch. Again, he sounds fine here. His chords are together. It sounds pretty nice. It's light enough to the point where there's melody and tuning, and there's no kind of huge glaring placement issues with Hendry's voice. Not at all, really. It just sounds forward and full and nice. He has a habit of kind of going again and kind of bringing it into this baritonal place. Sometimes he like harmonizes with people like Ten and Xiaojun, and he can just the lower portion of it because his voice sounds thick, it sounds full, it sounds nice. And as opposed to Lucas, whose voice kind of sits there naturally, Hendry has to go down there kind of by choice, which shows a bit of technique, I think. As he goes up, his voice sounds a lot more comfortable than Lucas's. Hendry stays much more connected and much more full. He doesn't kind of lighten it to alleviate the fact his voice is really deep. He just kind of sings in a very spoken way. There's a bit of melody, a bit of tune. There's no like huge technique or huge range shown, but he kind of sings kind of like as someone would rap, with a bit of a forward placement, really comfortable, really nice, stays fully connected and kind of puts a bit more tune in. And doesn't really have any huge glaring placement issues, but he goes up more efficiently than Lucas does, because as I say, Lucas's voice kind of goes lightish and then stops, whereas Hendry's voice kind of keeps going, just it doesn't mix or anything, and he doesn't really try and pull much weight in terms of grabbing or using too much chest voice in a higher area for it to really be an issue. So to me, Hendry's voice doesn't have any glaring weaknesses. It's decent, it's okay, it sounds pretty nice when he keeps it more melodic, even though he just kind of keep it slightly more spoken, which is a good thing. When singing is spoken, it means it's easy, but the technique isn't really blowing anybody away because he doesn't do anything in terms of crazy impressive vocals. He just kind of stays where he's comfortable, or goes a little bit lower with technique, or a little bit higher without any kind of grab or any sort of huge lightning issue. But it doesn't really have much in the way of an individual style as of right now. It doesn't really have an individual flavour. It kind of just stays where it's comfortable, goes a little bit higher sometimes, a little bit lower sometimes, slightly more comfortably than Lucas's does, and that's kind of all there is to Hendry's voice so far. There isn't really much to judge him on, but what he has is pretty good, pretty reliable, pretty consistent, just technically like not insane or anything, but that could come. Okay, so to me, Yang Yang is the bridge gap. He sings a bit, he has a clear melodic presence in his voice that I can talk about, yet he still kind of mainly does rap like the rest of the guys I've mentioned, but there is actually stuff to judge him on, kind of. Let's have a look at his voice.
It's true love, love, love， 你却自动就往你方向走，用尽一切办法让你懂。你发觉 MG 意识那么是可 Kiss word why you ask who face moment face facts I'm living through for now trying to remember the good times Our life was gone through so long I don't mind I hate this part paper hearts And I hold a piece of WayV sending a song for me I don't mean to brag but I'm with it in a bag yeah When you see the racks Love it when you call me señorita I wish I could pretend I did.
Okay, so to me, Yang Yang so far is the only person I've really seen who showcased a singing style that is totally different from his rap style. He does occasionally sing kind of rappy as well, like he'll kind of stay quite forward, quite high with his spoken tone and sing in that way, adding a bit more melody, just as Lucas and Hendry both did. But on top of that, that Yang Yang has, he also has a regular melodic singing tone. So basically, he sings in a very light, beautiful way. His tuning isn't perfect, it does drop off now and again, which kind of just means there's a lack of practice, and sometimes when he doesn't use too much chord closure, it's a bit harder to tune with a lighter sound, but he doesn't sing in a super airy sound a lot of the time. He just kind of stays light and really easy and really relaxed. I mean, yes, as I said, the tuning isn't perfect, but it's good enough, it's pretty decent, it's the best so far, I would say. He has an ability to kind of stay light and go up and down kind of the middle of his voice quite efficiently and quite nicely. He also has really nice passaggio navigation. I've noticed he occasionally puts his voice slightly nasal into his nose, which means again that it has a natural affinity of lightening the tone slightly, and yes, while it can get stuck, and because he uses nasality, he doesn't really keep his chords together and bring up any sort of mixed voice. The nasality kind of makes his voice a little bit stuck, but it's not like a huge problem. But because of the nasality, his voice is naturally light and thinned out, and then when he goes up towards his passaggio, his transition into head voice is very beautiful, by far the best so far, and has by far the most tuning kind of all the way through his range. So to me, Yang Yang's voice, yes, it has kind of the rap singing thing down just like Hendry and Lucas. It kind of has a melodic singing tone as well, which is light and delicate and lovely. Again, it's not like very powerful, and it hasn't really got much in the way of chord closure to kind of get into any sort of mixed area or any sort of hugely impressive technical vocals, but he has a nice thinned out light tone because of the slight nasal placement. It's a beautiful passaggio navigation which gets him into higher areas more comfortably than the other three guys that I mentioned so far, and his voice just sounds like it's got a lot more to kind of work with at the moment. It's more melodic, it's more of a singing voice as opposed to kind of a rappy singing voice where they're doing their best to change the pitch. So to me, Yang Yang kind of has the best singing voice of the rap line, by quite a bit, to be fair. It's the most melodic and the most nice, but there's still a lot of things it could do that it can't do right now, and that can be attributed to kind of the lack of chord closure, and that he sings in more of a light style and he prefers kind of falsetto rather than anything else. But I think one day, once he's given a chance to showcase his vocals more, they will improve and they will grow. But as of right now, he's got a nice melodic voice that has beautiful passage navigation, and just nothing in the way of kind of huge mix potential or power potential as of right now. Okay, so now we're on to the three kind of main vocalists of WayV. Kun, of the three, has the weakest technique and the kind of least to offer vocally. He's still good and still a good singer, and there's actually stuff to delve into and talk about. Okay, let's watch him sing.
Crying myself away. Kings through your phone. Oh no, love to you is just a game. 好好的感受雪花绽放的情，我会相信一切有尽头。推掉说我每天都遇上你就乱了脚步，什么都不在乎，那只在乎你幸不幸福。星空不曾有过泪光在闪，你说承认碎落时不爱这一回有爱。
Okay, so Kun's voice, first of all, has a lovely tone. It's very melodic, it's a singing voice, it's very nice. He is clearly a singer and has good singing training. Okay, he kind of has two very separate parts of his voice that he kind of could use slightly more efficiently for me to get kind of a more mixed article. But firstly, when he stays kind of lower and thicker, he stays quite connected, quite full, in a really kind of easy place. And his voice sounds pretty good down here. It's very comfortable, there's no glaring issues down here, there's no kind of placement problems. It's just comfortable, it's connected, it's full, it's nice. It's not hugely dark or thick, his voice is still kind of higher sitting, but it has this avenue to it. It's thick, full, comfortable, and very nice. As he brings it up, he has the best ability to bring it up so far. He lightens his tone to a point where it sounds kind of the most different from the rest of his voice. It has the most technical changes when it goes up, but the way he kind of goes up isn't the most efficient way to sing incredibly well. He basically lightens his tone to the point of almost a breathy sound. Sometimes it is really rather breathy, and that can do one of two things. Firstly, it gets you into a lighter area, which means, as I say, it's got a natural change from his other part of his voice, so it's got a nice lightening, and it gets into a higher place, the middle of his voice, quite efficiently and quite nicely. However, it stops him going really any higher than that, because when you kind of bring an airy sound up, it will only go so far, and then as you kind of try and bring it higher up, if you stick with the airiness, it can kind of sound pulled and a little bit strained, and Kun's voice does do this. When he's kind of in his upper middle voice, I suppose, it sounds like there's a little bit of extra grab because he is alleviating for the fact he's got a lot of air in his sound with his throat kind of pulling to get to notes. It's not like a huge problem, but he is kind of stopping himself mixing super efficiently. There are times I've noticed where he kind of sticks with the chord closure from down low, uses the breath in this, and kind of gets into a slightly more balanced mixed place. But you'll notice he doesn't really do many of the super high notes or any of the big notes because his voice is limiting itself slightly by using a lot of breath as it goes up. Because it is literally impossible to go it won't really go too much higher without transitioning into head voice, which is fine, but you want to kind of bridge that gap to be as good and as rounded as you possibly can be, as the next two guys kind of do a little bit better than Kun does. As I say, his voice is light and breathy, so it has a lovely, beautiful kind of passage navigation as well. It's got a really nice head voice, really nice falsetto, and it blends beautifully down into that lighter kind of mixed-ish, airy place. But as I say, he's just kind of stopping himself have a really beautiful mixed voice because he is bringing up a lighter sound. And yes, that lighter sound kind of gets him up into the middle of his voice nice and efficiently, and he clearly sounds very comfortable doing this. But if you kind of stick with a lighter stylistic quality in your voice, it's hard to actually bring the chord closure in and mix up into a nice kind of balanced place in the middle, which is the only issue Kun's voice really has. It doesn't have that middle place because of the kind of airier, brighter quality that it does in the lower middle part of it. But yeah, I think his voice is really good. It's really nice. It's got beautiful head voice. It's got a very nice low register when he stays more full, and the airy quality is a nice stylistic choice. It just limits the fact that he gets into a mix as efficiently as the next couple of guys, and there is a little bit of extra squeeze. But his voice is still really good, still really practiced, and sounds really nice. Just I think if he kind of stuck with the chord closure a little bit more than that airy style and that light style, he'd have a little bit more success in the kind of power area of things. But he's still a good vocalist. Okay, so 1 and 2 is kind of a toss-up depending on what you kind of value from singing. To me, 10's voice is marginally less versatile, but it is really smooth and really nice. Let's delve into it and have a look at his voice.
Can never share. You say we just friends. Know the way you taste, la 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 la, yeah. 不在乎 girl， 只在乎一件事跟输 ，yeah。无法不对你付出，能不能给我一 ？I'll wake your bathroom and you baby, I'm in love. Touch me, tease me, fill me up, call it. Show me the way you want it, time. 事到雨里面对面，你此刻都是我想爱的内心内心想问。I'm packing for you, baby. So just stop it in my life. 梦会记下长大吧 still not satisfied.
Firstly, can I just fanboy over 10 for a second? This man is so talented. He's an insanely good dancer, one of the best in the industry. He's a fantastic vocalist. He can kind of rap as well. He speaks about 18 languages. The guy is amazing and his voice is gorgeous. He doesn't have any glaring placement issues like Kun does, or have any kind of issue with air or anything. His whole instrument is quite high sitting and quite connected. He doesn't have a problem using too much air in his sound or lightening it too much. It's not a super heavy sound. As I said, his voice is kind of higher sitting and it really suits being quite smooth and kind of R&B almost. Love Talk, his voice sounds phenomenal. Like the loving the way you wanna talk. That kind of area's voice sounds gorgeous. It sounds amazing. The only reason I put him second, not first, is his voice doesn't have as much versatility as number 1 for me. All the way through, his voice sounds blended. It sounds the same, and there's no real issue with that. That's a very good thing. It's kind of light and smooth and nice, but a nice full connected sound all the way through. It just doesn't have access to as many colours as number 1, or kind of almost as many places. His low range isn't that great because his voice is kind of higher sitting, but his mixed voice is really nice. He places his voice quite in his head quite a lot of the time and brings up a nice amount of weight. He doesn't have a huge upper extension to get into. I have heard it, but it's mainly on studio tracks, so I'm not really sure if he kind of has that, because his voice sounds naturally more efficient when he kind of goes into sort of the A4 sort of area and then flips into a head voice, and his head voice work again is beautiful because his voice is naturally higher and lighter, so that bridge gap sounds really nice. And unlike Kun, who kind of goes straight from a ha to a ha, 10 kind of has that middle place a little bit better. He has a slight habit of thinning his sound out quite a lot and then pulling for notes. I've noticed a lot of time he's doing this and his throat kind of looks like it's got a bit of tension because he's reaching for things a little bit, because he's alleviating for the fact that he's got quite a thin tone, particularly all the way through his voice, and he's trying to add a little bit more connection and a little bit more grab. Having said that, he also sometimes puts his face a bit more forward, opens his mouth a bit more, and the sound becomes much more open and much more resonant and kind of more chest dominant when he brings up a little bit more weight. So Ten's voice is kind of interesting. It's seamless all the way through. It sounds really nice, really full and connected. Has a beautiful R&B soul-y quality to it almost. Beautiful head voice work. It just has a slight habit sometimes of getting a bit thin and a bit stuck, and he kind of pulls a little bit, but it's never a huge issue. There isn't a lot of throatiness in his sound, and he often a lot of the time brings his head a bit more forward, opens his mouth a little bit more, gets more space, unleashes better, stronger notes. Now, while I don't think his mix is the most efficient mix I've ever heard in my life, and kind of he sounds better when he's kind of staying in his comfortable modal voice and just staying kind of in a chest configuration with a little bit of mix with thinning out here and there, his voice is really good and really strong, just lacks the variety of colours that number one does, but I think Ten's got a beautiful voice with a slight squeeze now and again when he doesn't open his mouth fully, but he's still a great singer. Right guys, so firstly, I'm going to pronounce it as Xiaojun. As you've noticed, my Mandarin pronunciation is horrendous. I do apologise. I think that's how you pronounce it. If not, please correct me, but I'm very sorry. I know it's a hard language to say things in. Anyway, to me, Xiaojun's voice is the most varied in the group, and it has kind of the most access to a lot of different things. Let's watch him sing.
Guess I kinda like the way you remember the pain. Now the day bleed into nightfall. It's not a thing that I would change. It's girl, are you amazing?
Okay, so I will just want to say, if someone puts Ten first, I understand why. His voice all the way through kind of sounds a little bit more seamless and comfortable in kind of higher areas. To me, Xiaojun's voice kind of fits all of the areas of someone's voice, low, high, and medium, the best. It's got a decent low range. It's not super thick or super heavy, but it works quite well. It stays nice and connected down here. It sounds pretty good. The middle of his voice is kind of a choice. He either lightens it quite a lot and goes kind of falsetto-y head voice mode, like he does in a lot of his acoustic covers. He kind of lightens his tone out quite nicely with no weird placement problems. It's just a nice light thin tone. Gets up into his head voice nice and easily, a lovely falsetto. The passage navigation is very good once again, and that bridge gap is there. Unlike Kun, who uses too much air, Xiaojun doesn't have that sort of issue. Sometimes he kind of stays a bit thicker and fuller and brings up a darker sound. My only slight negative with his voice is he brings his voice kind of far back when he does this. It's not so far back to the point where he can't mix down into it, because he clearly can. He showcased that he can. But there is a slight far back placement now and again. I prefer it when he keeps it more forward and a bit lighter. But that is a placement issue he does have, but it's not a huge problem. But to me, it kind of gives, again, a more kind of hooty, robust sound that Ten's voice doesn't really have access to. His is more kind of smooth and seamless all the way through, whereas Xiaojun's kind of has a choice of being light and forward or kind of far back and a bit hootier, and that's totally fine. As well as that, Xiaojun seems to be the guy who mainly gets the high notes, particularly in things like Moonwalk. Again, I want to hear more live stuff to see if he can actually really do this. But if he can, and I'm going to go with the benefit of the doubt that he can, he kind of keeps the voice in his head, brings up a good amount of weight, and then stays in kind of a full, balanced, kind of head-dominant mixed voice, which is really powerful, really strong, and a really efficient way to get into that higher register. A lot of the time as well, he kind of stays quite full and quite connected, brings the voice into a middle place, and kind of stays the chest dominant belt. It's not like super mixed or super balanced, but it's a nice heavy full sound that sounds really sustainable and really easy and nice and repeatable. And as well as that, Xiaojun's voice has a ridiculous amount of emotion. I don't know if it's kind of the Mandarin language again, because I'm not an expert on the way it sounds and the way it's kind of delivered phonetically, but his voice just sounds like he's always on the brink of tears when he's singing kind of sadder songs. And to me, he delivers emotional things the best in the group. Mixed in with that, he has obviously a very varied instrument that can kind of work in the mid-range, work in a higher range where he kind of keeps the placement more in his head and brings up a nice amount of weight, and then unleashes these kind of bigger, more forward, balanced mixed notes like the ha kind of area of his voice. As well as that, he's got obviously choices of the hootier sound in the middle or the lighter sound and going with the passage navigation. So to me, while Ten's voice is kind of more consistent all the way through, I think Xiaojun's voice offers a little bit more, and to me he's the marginally stronger vocalist, but I understand kind of whichever way you want to put it. But to me, Xiaojun's voice sounds really good, very varied, very nice, and sounds wonderful. Okay, thank you guys very much for watching WayV. As I said, if they kind of have more albums in the future and there's kind of more to delve into and I'm totally wrong and I understand that I'm wrong, I will re-rank and I'm happy to do that. But as of right now, I think this is a fair ranking as to what we have. And I think they've got some really good singers and I'm excited to see kind of musically where they progress and what they do with their voices. Next time we're doing a second gen group or an older group, and one I've been asked about for a while and haven't done yet is Infinite. I think they're a second gen group. We're going to do Infinite next. Hope you're excited, and until next time, see you later.